I'm on. What's this guy on the screen? Oh, he's gone. Peace. I hope everybody in attendance is doing fine. You know, I'm really not one for cordialities and formalities, so let's get straight to it. I I got real interested in predictive astrology at around the age of 21. Before then, it was just all about uh, before then it was all about personality profiling. I just wanted to be able to like, you know, and tell a person what the chart said that they would like. You know, the more you do research, the more books you read on the matter, the more you um, essays and topics having to do with predictive cycles. The ancients, they used astrology for the prediction of mundane events. And I say mundane, I mean, hold on a second. This is my first time streaming, y'all. Y'all know this, right? So until I get the knack of it, you know, there's gonna be a few little interruptions, okay? All right, and distractions, okay? And now, the ancients used this tool as a means of prediction, and they were in no way as precise as modern astrologers with regards to the aspects and degrees. And you know, proof of this is when you look at um, Vedic methodology, they use aspects by sign, right? Unlike Western astrologers who use the tightness of aspects to determine when an event is going to transpire, they use planetary periods. And you look at Mayan astrology and Chinese astrology, you see they did the same thing in terms of sectioning off the zodiac. So, um, with the advent of modern astrology and modern tools that fine tune our measure with regards to the motion of the planets, we got a little bit more concise and precise, you know. And I don't even know if modern astrologers are more accurate than the ancient astrologers, to be honest with you. I think that the ancient ones were better at making predictions than we are today, and we are seeking terribly in every sector to revive what they were doing. You know, I've read, pardon, I can't remember the name of the book, right? I've been studying this craft for like 3 decades, more than 3 decades. And so I don't remember every author. I don't remember everything that I read, right? So anyway, I read once that this guy in Europe predicted the death of a French king. And on the day of the French king's death, he was healthy as a motherfucker, you know, and he was healthy. And he got on his horse and rode off, and somebody said, "See, look at the king, man. He's healthy as hell. What did you say?" And the guy said, "Wait until the hour." And at that hour, the king died. Playing, you know, he was doing some kind of combat exercise, practicing, right? I think he was fencing or doing the lance thing, you know, you ride on the horse with that long stick. At any rate, he predicted his death pretty accurately. That was what propelled me into experimentation and research and finally the application of predictive measure. So there are a few things that you really need to be mindful of when you start doing predictive astrology, all right? First of all, is that the calendar is not accurate, right? We convert the motion into days, and from point to point determine how many days are in. Then we use the calendar to convey the day it will happen. So, in other words, you have to be of the mind that there is a geometric measure going on here. All right? We don't say in cosmophysics that a year is 365.25 days. All right? A year is 360 degrees long, not 365 days. I care less about days. So, you know, when you get these astrologers that profess, okay, whether they're actually qualified or not, they profess to be making predictions. I predict this and I predict that, you know. Ask them what measure they use. If you are a predictive astrologer, then you really know that a year is 360 degrees long, right? Because it's geometry. You can't do it using the calendar. Proof of that is, go to any software program you want and advance it by 90 days. You're going to see that the sun didn't move 90 degrees. So that 1 degree equals 1 day is a fairy tale. It's a myth. It's an idea that you need to crush, pulverize, and allow to disappear from the framework of your mind when you are measuring cycles. Second thing we need to recognize is that every cycle is 360 degrees. Every planetary motion, right, is 360 degrees. So when you conceptualize how to make predictions, see, 360 degrees. This 360 degree measure, it simplifies and makes concise every measure for any planet. The moon cycle is 360 degrees long. Mercury cycles 360 degrees long, right? You want me to be redundant, right? Any planet, their cycle through the zodiac is measured in 360 degree cycles. Now, some cycles get a little bit more complex than that, though, right? You have what we call synodic cycles, all right? And this cycle is not always 360 degrees long, all right? Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're shorter, depending on the speed of the planet. So we are doing today the synod of Jupiter and Saturn, and the particular synod that we're going to be working with is the one for May 28th. Can they see this? May 28th, 2000 at 2:20 and 24, no, and 45, pardon me, seconds p.m. I used Washington, D.C. You can use your own personal chart, all right? And your own hometown or any place on the planet. That is totally up to you. That's not going to interfere with your reception of how this measure is taken. This is my personal method, all right? It doesn't operate to the day. But we're looking at a 20-year cycle here. So we don't really need it to the day, right? You use other means and methods to apply. There are several modes for predicting anything in astrology, okay? You can use Vedic astrology. You can use Chinese, Tibetan, whatever methodologies they use. I don't know those, but I know that they exist, right? So what I did, because of what's been transpiring recently as of this year, you know, the coronavirus and other things. It's not just the coronavirus, you know. Trump, his policies, and things that have happened over the last, I would say, 20 years. I did this measure back in 2000. And when I did, I used the material from it. I've been using the material from it for over the last 20 years. I mean, for those of you who are familiar with me, when I first came on Blog Talk Radio, I think it was 2011, 2012. A lot of the things that I was asked to address, I referenced my notes from this measure to determine. So we were already 10 and 11 years into that cycle, all right? Now, another thing I need to address. You got some pretty good astrologers that exercise mundane astrology. So this is no descent towards what they do, all right? Me, I specialize in genethliacal. And there's a great debate in the astrological circles that genethliacal, which is the astrology of the lives of people, what applies to people and the events of people, as opposed to mundane, which is worldly events. The astrology of government action and reaction, and the astrology of society, of the collective, okay? And you got some people out there that argue that mundane methodology and interpretation cannot be used with genethliacal technique, and that genethliacal technique cannot be used in the sphere of mundane astrological measure and predictive application. Right? I disagree with that. Okay? Because I've been able to successfully use genethliacal methodology on the charts of countries. All right? In 2009, in the month of March, the country of Egypt revolted and they overthrew their president. They ousted that dude, Hosni Mubarak. All right? And on Facebook and in astrology, one of my students asked me to come in there and demonstrate how we would predict the outcome of that event, because the uprising started before I had even considered looking at Egypt and what have you, right? And I used the secondary progress method on the chart for Egypt, all right? And I got the birth date. The source of the birth date was a European, a French astrologer named Campion, and it's spelled champion, I think, spells very close to champion. Anyway, they hold him in high regard. I can no longer do that, right? But at any rate, I took the date that he used for Egypt, and the date that he used is the date that they made the announcement that the United Arab Republic of Egypt, or whatever they called it at the time, that they were in power. When they made that announcement on the radio in 1947, I believe it was, then he used the time of that announcement, which is conventional, okay? But using the secondary progress method from the time that he gave through the chart off 11 days, which is about 44 to 45 minutes, depending on how fast the sky is moving when you begin your measure, right? Now, there are a lot of factors that come into effect when it comes to talking about that kind of methodology, so I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to show you the simplified method that I developed that allows me to look at society or the world for global events, and you will come within the year. Now, it's only required that you know the year a thing is going to manifest, and then you can use other methodological tools or methodologies, right, to narrow it down within the space of that year. Well, today I'm going to show you how to narrow it down to 1 year, right? Now, the reason for that is I've been getting an overflow of requests. Yo, talk about the coronavirus. Really, I talked about that shit years ago, man. And I don't do this to appease. I'm not in the business of appeasing people because they're curious. Most of y'all hear something that goes in one ear and out the other. Why would I waste my time? I'm really here for people who want to learn this science, not people who just want to hear what the stars have to say. And pardon me for that, or don't. But that's where I'm at. I don't really have time for that. So I hope that there are some people that are going to take this method and put it to the test, right? Prove me wrong. I invite you, all right? But I'm going to demonstrate here, so it's going to be pretty useless, but I'm going to demonstrate here for you how it works in retrospect, all right? And we can discuss the next cycle, which starts at December 21st, 2020, right? The next Jupiter-Saturn cycle starts, and be about 2 months before then, I'll do a show using this measure to look at the next 21 years, right? Or approximately 20 years. Now, the key here is to know how long the cycle you're measuring is, and then to throw that length of that cycle onto your format, all right? Now, like I said, a year is 360 degrees of solar transit. And I'm going to repeat this for clarity, right? If you get an astrological program or you look in the ephemeris and you skip from 1 day to 90 days later, you're going to find the sun has moved less than 90 degrees. So 1 degree does not equal 1 day. Remember that. All right? And understand that in the winter and in the spring, the earth is moving, is closer to the sun than it is in the summer and in the fall. And therefore, the sun appears to move through the zodiac at a slightly faster rate during the winter and spring months than it does in the summer and fall. So, with that in mind, you must also understand that when you say 90 days, it's not going to be 90 days, right? I measured this Jupiter-Saturn cycle from the last Jupiter-Saturn conjunction to the next one. And I found it to be 20 years, and get this number. All right? Get this number. Let me know if this marker allows them to see on that screen, like, you know, because I can see it with my eyes. I don't know what they can see, what they can't see, right? This Jupiter-Saturn cycle is 20 years, and I'm going to put the decimal here first before I break down how to think of it in terms of signs and degrees, right? 5629166. So, from the time that Jupiter and Saturn conjuncted, in other words, they met at the same degree at 22 minutes. At 22 degrees and 44 minutes of arc. That's like 1 minute of arc under 22.75 degrees, right? It lasted for 20 years, 0.562916667. That's abbreviated, really, because I used a calculator. This 666 goes on and on to infinity. That's why they end it with 7, all right? For those who don't understand the math or how fractions and decimals operate, right? Well, when you convert 20.56, you only need to multiply this by 360. To find out how many solar degrees this transit took, right? And it took 20 years is 7,200 solar degrees. All you have to do is multiply 360 by 20, you see? And then you have to measure where the sun was. The sun was at 7 degrees and 42 minutes of Gemini when Jupiter and Saturn conjuncted. And in the next conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, which will be December 21st of this year, so we're entering the end of that cycle this year. You have to see where the sun was at that time. It was at 0 degrees and 21 minutes of arc of Capricorn. So how far is it in degrees exactly from 7 degrees 42 minutes of Gemini to 0 degrees and 21 minutes of Capricorn, right? So I figured that out, right? Understand that in the formula, this is what you need to do for any synodic cycle. The next Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, there's going to be another one after that, right? It's not going to be the exact same length of this one. So you're going to have to use your ephemeris or your astrology software program to measure its length, all right? At any rate, once you measure the length of that cycle, which here is 20.5629 years, right? You have to decide how you're going to format your predictions, all right? Now, because like I said, I use genethliacal astrology, and I wanted a short, I didn't want a long, drawn out, long, tedious measure, because that's what it is if you want to predict things to the day. You're going to need to, even if you have astrology software or a calculator, there are still several mathematical equations that you have to exercise or that you have to execute in order to reach your proper measure. But I wanted to limit it. I wanted to make it easy or to simplify it to some extent and still be accurate within the year, right? So like I could say, using this method on 2002, Congress declared war on Iraq, you see? And Congress is our home government. That is the moon in Aries. And it concurs with the year 2000. So, as it unfolded and I saw it coming to fruition, things that started manifesting that concur with the planetary stations, I became confident that this could work forever. If it worked for this 20-year phase, it'll work for another 20-year phase. So I also use what they call a stack, a 30-degree stack. And I use this in the reading of people in my genethliacal applications to determine how long a time period will transpire between events in a person's life. I also implemented the primary direction, the method of primary directions. You saying that 1 year equals 1 degree in proportion and abstractly. So, for example, if you look at Kobe Bryant's chart, the distance between Saturn and Pluto in his birth chart was 41 degrees and 26 minutes of arc. Now, if you say that 1 degree equals 1 year, then a half of a degree equals 6 months, a quarter of a degree equals 3 months, and when you get all the way down using minutes of arc, 26 minutes of arc is like 156 days, or 156 solar degrees, right? That's what it really is, 156 solar degrees. Well, he died at the age of 41 years and 158 solar degrees, 2 degrees off. Which, in the scheme of a calendar, that's like 47 hours and 40-something minutes and 50-something seconds, depending on how fast the Earth is turning, because it doesn't have a constant rate, all right? So, at any rate, seeing that these methods work for analyzing the lives of people, the energy is energy in my book. The sun is the main player or the main proponent in any astrological chart, whether you're doing a mundane chart or a personal chart. It identifies the individual. In a monarchy, it identifies the king. In a republic, it identifies the president or the prime minister. You understand what I'm saying? So, I arrived to the conclusion that I could take this entire Jupiter-Saturn synod cycle and I could throw it on the number line and divide the period of this cycle by 30 because I'm using a 30-degree stack. You see? Now, in order to use a 30-degree stack, you start with 0, you end with 29, or you can even go to 0 again, so, because it kind of helps to know, right? Sometimes, I don't know. You decide, it's 0 to 29, right? Or 1 to 30, because I'm of the understanding that European charts start the first degree as 1, and the first whole degree is the number 1 degree. Whereas in Western or United States, right? In the U.S., we start them out with 0, and from 0 to 1 is the first degree, and from 1 to 2 is the second degree, and it depends on your perspective and preference, right? But at any rate, 30 degrees is the measure with which every sign in the zodiac is compounded. So you can get the whole 12, all 12 signs right here in this 30-degree number line. Right, but I do realize that you would need, how do you say, a foundation in understanding how the aspects work and how the wheel does look, how the circle does look. Because, for example, here at the 25th degree, right, we have the midheaven in Gemini, we have the ascendant in Virgo, we have the North Node in Cancer in the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction chart for May 28th, 2000, right? So, I mean, you have to realize that that's not a conjunction, that they're not all together, and that Gemini is 90 degrees from Virgo, and that Cancer is 60 degrees from Virgo. You know, I automatically can see here that the North Node is on the 11th cusp, right? Those are the little basics that you can get on your own, you know, if you just study. You just apply yourself to making the image of the chart second nature and to understand the cycles. You'll get it. But this is like an aspectarian, you know? It'll tell you any two planets at the same number on this chart, if they're in different signs, that they are in perfect aspect one to another one. So that's the convenience that I found that motivates me to use it. And because it works with people, I decided to try it back 20 years ago on the Jupiter-Saturn cycle. What's deep is that cycle isn't over, but I am more than convinced from the concurrences that have occurred over the last 20 years, right, since 2000, that this can be used everywhere. Now, I'm going to do the next Jupiter-Saturn cycle, and if I survive, you see me getting old, right? You know, if I survive that 20 years, I'll be able to look back and say, yeah, it definitely worked. Not, y'all can pick up where I leave off at and run it, all right? And partly the main reason that motivated me to do this, right, is that, man, I see so many charlatans out there doing astrology, claiming to be astrologers because they got computer software. You can go to Astrodice. If you don't have software, you can't afford the good software program for your computer. They give away, you know, it's fairly good software for free, you know, but these people don't even use that. And they claim to be astrologers. Let me tell you something, man. Astrology is the measure of the motion of planets and what they concur with. It is more than just being able to look at a chart and say Mars in this sign means this. And if you don't really understand the rate and the motion of a planet, then you can't accurately predict anything. And you got people out there lucking up once in a while, you know. I mean, like, let's say this. Every year since the Roman Empire and even before, there is a political figure murdered, assassinated, okay? Every year. You can get on Google and look it up. Go to Wiki and look up political figureheads that were assassinated in the last century, right? And every year somebody gets murdered. So let me show you how these charlatans work. I'm going to play one right now. So next year, 2021, a political figurehead is going to get murdered. Now, I just predicted it. So next year, when somebody in office, whether it's in China or, wherever, I predicted it. See, this is what they're doing. And they're calling that bullshit astrology. And they're really making the craft bad because people really want to know what this is. And all they have is out of 100 astrologers, is 2 or 3 that are really doing astrology. Now, pardon me, or you want to be astrologers who proclaim yourself astrologers who can't even begin to tell me how long it takes the moon to go around the zodiac, okay? Who don't even have a clue how many minutes are in a day. Every chart is based on a captured moment from a particular day, right? So I want to undo that. I want to clean it up. And for those of you who are disheartened, who feel like, I'm an intuitive astrologer. Astrology is not an intuitive tool. Because you can't intuit their birthdays. When you ask that person for their birthday, there's no intuition involved. And then once you get that birthday, any deduction you make with that regard is not intuition either. Intuition cometh of no prompt. Babies intuit. We intuit who our mothers are, because nobody tells us that. We intuit when our parents bring somebody in the house, and, as a baby, we don't want to get nowhere near this cat. Because we intuit this nigga ain't right. You see? That's intuition. It comes with no evidence, with no worldly influence. So when you say I'm an intuitive astrologer, what you should say is I'm a guesstimator. I'm a good guesser. And if you're a really good guesser, you can get away with calling yourself a psychic, but leave my craft alone. I'm gonna punch all y'all in the face. Okay, so at any rate, I wanted to make it easy so that people can pick it up and use it, and with a fair degree of accuracy, they would be performing an authentic astrological measure. Okay? And this doesn't require any high degree of genius. If you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, you can use this number stack and a period of a cycle. You can use the ephemeris. You can open this book. An ephemeris is a book that compiles the motion of planets. And it tells you what degree and what sign of the zodiac a planet is on any particular day between the margin of time that the ephemeris covers. Because you got different kinds of ephemerises. You got ephemerises from 1970 to 1980. You got ephemerises for the 1900s. So it will cover every day of the year from January 1st of 1900 to December the 31st of 1999. Okay? And you got ephemerises that go back even further. Astrodynst, or Astro.com, their chart service, they've extended and paid mathematicians to create an ephemeris for their program, for their software that goes back 10,000 years. So you can go 10,000 years into the past and 10,000 years into the future, right? With your measure. So we have, for free, all the tools we need to use to implement a measure and a predictive schedule that is close enough to give you credibility and to astound even your own conceptual mind. All right. So let me get to it. I need to express that they take a circle and they turn it into a sine wave. And I don't mean S-I-G-N sine. I mean S-I-N-E sine. They cut the circle in half, right? And then they cut it in half again. And this is the beginning and this is the end. And if this was a 360-degree measure, they convert this geometry in the 360 degrees, this would be 0 degrees Aries. And this would be 0 degrees Libra. 180 degrees from this point. This would be 90 degrees. And this would be the 360th degree going into the 0 degree again. And the sine wave starts over and over. Really, all you do is take this and close it, and there goes your circle again, right? Well, they use this conventionally for synodic cycles. This would be the conjunction. This would be the first square. This would be the opposition. And this would be the next conjunction that closes this synod, the beginning of this synod. And this is also 90 degrees. Pardon me. I know somebody out in the audience that says, you missed the second square. You don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so there goes the second square. This one is 90 degrees, 180 degrees. This is 270 degrees, and that's 360 degrees. This is excellent. I'm not trying to do away with this measure. I recommend that you learn how to use it, okay? Because it's a very easy tool to visualize any synodic cycle. But at the time, I was busy making a brand. I wanted my own brand of astrology because I was discovering tools that I wasn't finding in books, some of which I found in books later. I mean, because you think you discover something in astrology, and 9 times out of 10, there is absolutely nothing under the sun that is new. Somebody's using it. This number stack is an example. For the last 15 years, I thought I was the only person on the face of this earth using this. Because all the astrologers I knew and were building with had never heard of it. Then some astrology, what was that? Astrovisor? We saw that on Astrovisor? Huh? Yeah, but what program did we see it on? We don't have an astrology program called the Chaldean, right? That was on Astrovisor. I think it was Astrovisor. They pulled up some Chaldean method, and this shit is ancient. They've been doing the Chaldean number stack for years, all right? But so, aside from all that, I took the idea of employing the synodic measure onto the Chaldean stack. And what I have to do is, I told y'all that the cycle for Jupiter is 20.5629. Can they see this? That number? Can they see it? All right. 1666 all the way out, right? Okay. Or just put a 7 there and it'll work, right? I converted that into actual degrees, and I came to 7,402 degrees, 0.65 degrees, okay? Which needed to be applied to this number line. So I divided this by 30. Now, understand, this is the length of the cycle. In solar degrees. It is not the length of the cycle in calendar days. So, but this close, 0.985632 is the average when you divide 360 by 365.25. You come out with 0.985632. You see? So that's the average rate of the sun, right? But it really isn't, because on the first day of the year, the first day of spring, the sun is moving 1 degree and 1 minute of arc. You see? And in the summertime is in Leo, it's even moving slower than that. It's like moving 0.98 degrees per day, 57 minutes or 58 minutes of arc, which is like 0.96 or 0.98 degrees per day. So, and it's like that every summer and every fall until the distance of the earth from the sun in the seasons changes, which we're not going to see for hundreds of generations. We can count on the fact that 985632 is just the difference between understanding the geometry of the year and the calendar. It still doesn't give you the average motion of the sun to an exactness. But we can approximate, right? So we can say about 1 degree per day, right? Because regardless, whether it's fast or slow, that's where it's at. But you're going to want to get precise. I mean, you start off doing stuff like this, like I'm going to show you today, which puts you in the year. So you can know, oh, around this year, we can expect this type of change to shift to happen in society or in the government. You really don't need it to the day unless it affects and concurs with your birth chart, and then it will affect your life in a drastic measure. Like, for example, I stay in the house all day anyway. This quarantine thing they got going on, I don't even notice. I do that anyway. I barely leave my house for anything. Because, in studying all day, and I'm in the house watching movies all day and doing readings all day or whatever. I just don't play outside like I used to, right? So, and I'm not hurting at all. But there are a lot of people that wish they'd have known that 2020 was going to have them cooped up in the house. This North Node in Cancer points to that with the moon in Aries, because it is a blood disease that got us all cooped up, or a blood infection of some sort. You see, it affects the blood, and I've read so many articles on this coronavirus thing. I don't want to say what it is because I ain't got a clue. Like, there's evidence out there that it's not even a virus, that it is a toxin. So imagine all these cats out here talking about the coronavirus and the DNA of the coronavirus and all this and all that, and then we find out later that this shit is a fucking toxin, that it ain't no virus at all, right? I'm merely concerned with how it affects society and how the chart gives us indication of that, right? I'm not going to get into the conspiracy of it. I'm not going to get into the whether it is a virus or an agent, because this chart, with just a few techniques, even before we run the numbers on the predictive measure, tells us straight up that there would be issues that affect the blood and the breathing. For example, if we use the Hamburg School of Midpoint measure, right? We got the sun at 7 degrees of Gemini, right? We got Mars at 17 degrees of Gemini, and we got Mercury at 27 degrees of Gemini. This trio alone points to the effects of the disease, right? Of the affliction. Mercury is at 27. That started in between 2016 and 2017. And I bet you when they go back and find out about this germ or this toxin, that this is when they started working on it right here. That information is speculation because it has not been announced, right? But from all the impressions I get from this chart, the coronavirus was designed, or it was whatever agent it is that's causing us to be sick and causing this whole epidemic was commenced at the end of 2016, the beginning of 2017. See? At any rate, when we look at the Hamburg School of Midpoint Astrology, they believe that the exact middle of any two bodies is active with those two bodies' energies, okay? And the Magi Society, they advocate the same idea. There are several astrologers that I know that use this measure methodology mind frame, and it's valid, man, okay? So when we look at this trio, the sun is life, right? It is life, vitality, and force. But for simplification, it is life, right? And Mars, in simple terms, is inflammation. And Mercury is the act of breathing. The sign of Gemini itself deals with the lungs. Do you see that? Now, Mars being in the middle of it shows other proponents. What's happening is that whatever causes you to get sick, it impedes the breathing, right? Oxygen is not getting to the blood cells. Whether it is a toxin or a virus, that is the effect, right? Well, that's right here. It points to just that. Inflammation of the lungs, and a malfunction in the breathing. Now, you know, stuff like this is what makes me say that the classical astrologers had a point when they said anything that gets too close to the sun is considered combust or burnt up. And you got some astrologers who say, yeah, but that's within 15 degrees and that's there. But when you look back in history at the occasions that these things point to, anything in the same sign of the sun is subject, if it receives a bad aspect in the chart, to react adversely with the indications that the sun gives. Thus, these infected lungs and the disruption of the breathing affects the life force. People are dying, right? This Mars is feverish too, all right? So that's just one point, but getting back to the measure, pardon me for being all over the place, right? Certain things just come to mind that I feel I need to voice before I move forward. And it's more a demonstration of how to make this measure yourself than a dissertation on what it means. So you came here looking for delineation tips, you can go scram, right? I'm here talking about how to measure things. You don't like math? Get out of here. Don't waste my time with no questions about delineation today. You can hit me on I'm gonna do lives this month and stuff like that. We could talk about that on my lives later. Right now, we're dealing with the math of a thing. All right. So the entire cycle is 7,402.65 degrees of solar transit. And the reason why I'm breaking it down into a solar transit is because I'm using the sun to determine how long it lasts. You know, how many years it's going to be. And then the 30-degree number line comes from a measure of this one fractal, or the 12. It's the compounding of the 12 fractals of the motion of the sun, so that we can convert this motion into time, into solar degrees. All right? So what I did was I took that 7,200 degrees, which is 20 solar degrees, and how many degrees the sun moved before the next conjunction, and I came up with 7,402.65 degrees. And that distance equals 20.56291667 years, okay, like that, right? So I wanted to know what 1 degree would equate to. So I divided this by 30. And I came to understand that 1 degree equates to, is that big enough? 0.685430555555. Just put a 6 there to indicate that the 5 goes on forever. This many years, or this many solar degrees, or this much of a year, basically. This part of a year is exactly what one of the degrees here equals. So I want to know, like, who talks like that? I can't even, in my head, I know that's like more than half of a year, so it's more than 6 months. I know it's less than 0.75 years, which is 9 months. So I know it's between 6 or 7 months. Easily we can multiply this by 360 to get, because 360 equals a solar year. When we multiply this by 360, we get 246 degrees, 45 minutes, and 20 seconds of arc. In other words, that's 8 zodiac signs. 6.755 degrees. That's how much time the sun, this is how far the sun travels in 1 degree here in this measure for the Jupiter Saturn Synod. So roughly 3 degrees equals about 3 years. Really, it equals like 3 years in a month or 3 years in 5 weeks, you know? So that gives you an idea that about every 3 years, every time you move down, that the Venus Gemini event would see about 3 years later a lunar Aryan event. And since the next motion is the next station, pardon me, is 2 degrees, approximately just over 2 degrees, then it's just over 3 years that the Neptune indication will come after the lunar indication. So having this means by which to measure, you can determine like, wow. So by the time we get to 21, that's like 14 years into this cycle, almost 2014. Almost. Because you got to remember, it's not exactly 240 degrees or 8 months. It is exactly 246 degrees, 0.755 days, right? Or 0.755 degrees, all right? So with that in mind, you have to be willing really to deal with the decimals. And then now, really, that is the simplified form of it. Every 246 to 247 degrees, every time the sun moves that far, then we can expect to advance through this number line 1 step, all right? So we did that. I think I conveyed it all. I would like to go to an intermission. For some reason, my dining room has gotten extremely warm. So I'm gonna take 5 minutes and cool off, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna pick up where I left off. All right? I'm gonna do a question and answer in about a half hour. Would that be a good idea? After I come back on, all right? So, and I hope that your questions pertain to this. If not, you can go to my Facebook and contact me there and ask me questions that don't pertain to this. I don't want to know about your birth chart, okay? Don't ask me no questions. Well, I got Mars and Gemini. What does that mean for me? You ask me that when I'm doing readings of people, all right? Right now, I'm conveying a measure, and that's really all I'm concerned about. And I hope, it doesn't discourage you guys from participating. I hope you grab onto this and become a real astrology student. Maybe you can even fine-tune this method, all right? I want to go to, I don't know how to operate I'm gonna keep my hair out of my face. All right. I think that I might have delivered it in a way that could be confounding and confusing. So I'm gonna give another brief. I'm gonna write the instructions down so that you can practice it yourself. Go back and double check and triple check and pick it apart, and maybe find a way to tweak it to be more precise than it is. All right. I determined the length of the cycle in solar degrees or true years. Okay? I divided that by 30 to get the unit of time.
Wait a second.
So they missed everything just now. Okay. So I divided the length of the cycle in solar degrees by 30 degrees to derive the unit of time that equates to 1 degree of measure in the number line. Okay? In the 30-degree number line or number stack. Basically, that's it. Okay? Then I use that chart for the conjunction and put that in the number line. And each one of the degrees is using, I said it, approximately 247 degrees of arc. Let's just round it off, right? Because it's 246.755 degrees, which is, it equates to going through exactly 8 signs and then another 6 degrees, 6.755 degrees, which is 6 degrees, 45 minutes and 20 seconds of arc. Okay? And that's what makes it complicated for folks, you know. But you can easily round it off to 247 days. Right? So that's 8 months in a week. Okay? 8 months in 1 week. So it's 8 months in 1 week from the moment of the conjunction, which starts at 0, to the first one. Now, you have to understand that when you're using a number line for predictive measure and for scheduling, that this planet sits at this degree and there are empty degrees here. So people are going to naturally ask, what are you going to do with the empty degrees? Like, but there's nothing at 15 or 16. So what do you do for that? Well, what you got to know is these are windows. So that regardless how wide the space between them, they fall under the jurisdiction of the last planet that sat at its threshold, right? So the sun is at 7 degrees. The next planetary station isn't till 11 degrees. Of another sign, as a matter of fact, right? Well, the sun has domain over this entire, influence over this entire section. 7, 8, 9, 10 is still said to be under the sun's dominion, okay? Now, what I did to simplify it, made it easier for myself, was I got online, and knowing that this conjunction lasted, because it's going to be over in December this year, for 20 years and some months, right? I went and looked at a number line that allowed me to look at the past in retrospect. Now, I didn't predict everything that happened in the last 20 years. You know, that would be crazy. You know, I would really be smelling my piss then, you know, if I could do that, right? But I made quite a few predictions. I mentioned several of them on the radio shows that I did on Blog Talk. Now, most of them were a radio show that I was doing called Cosmophysics Radio. You can go to Blog Talk and just put my name, Ra Aku, in there, or my brand, Cosmophysics. And every show that I did, and that I was promoted using my name or my brand in, will show up. I also showed up on some shows as a guest, you know, in the queue, and was allowed to speak that my name isn't on the, you know, in the intro. When you go to the page, it says, yeah. So I wasn't always a guest. Sometimes I was just there participating. But throughout the time between 2011 up to like 2016, every show I appeared on, I was on Know the Ledge, Abundance Child Network. I was on the the Ringing Stone Network, okay? I made appearances as guests. I forget this brother's show. He's a Moorish brother. Yeah, the name of a pharaoh. Taharka. I was on Taharka's show. So all of these shows, I referenced certain motions, all right? Somebody asked a question here that said, will the mandate of vaccinations be shown on here? I mean, everything is seen in hindsight, all right? If I was going to look at that here, I would say that mandate isn't going to come about until the vaccine is made. And by the time that vaccine is made, this means of measure will be over. We'll be in the next Jupiter-Saturn cycle. So we'd have to make a measure for that synod. I have yet to do that, right? I'm going to do that this year, though, right? But I haven't done it to date. But looking at the next Jupiter chart, which is here in red, all right? If it's going to be mandated, it is going to be told by Mars, because Mars is injections, and Pluto, okay? And Mars and Pluto sit at the same degree. They're at a perfect square, which even if they try to get it mandated, they're not going to be able to enforce it on anyone but their citizens that participate in government programs, just like the polio vaccine back in the 70s, okay? They said, yeah, you gotta get it. But there are people that didn't, okay? The people that got it were the children that they wanted to put in schools. So they enforced it by using school. Yeah, you don't have to get you don't really have to get it, right? From person to person, you don't really have to do a motherfucking thing that you don't want to, right? But they mandate it be mandatory if you want to go to school, if you want to get Social Security, if you want to get government benefits or engage in government programs. Then they can require you they can deny you access to that by that mandate, right? And if that, looking at the last Saturn-Jupiter chart, if it does bring about a mandate, then it is told here by Pluto and Sag and by Mars and Gemini. This is an opposition that extends for 186 degrees. It's a little over a half of a cycle, a little over half of a year, a little over half of a synod, depending on which synod you're using in here. That's 10 years. So I doubt we'll see it this year using this, right? Since each degree equals approximately 247 days, we can now find a timeline for the years 2000 to 2020, which I did. I went online, I Googled it. You know, timeline for 2000 to 2020. And I found a timeline that concurred with a lot of the stations in this chart. Here they go. Okay? I don't know if you can see them. I really don't want to use it. I just want to show you that it's real. Okay? That I did it by hand. That I did the measure. That I wasn't playing. Okay, I put work in. Hold on, there's another sheet of paper around here that I balled up. They had a bunch of math on it. Give me a second. I'll find it. Unless it's been disposed of already by my wife, which is very likely, okay, so I'm going to skip that, all right? But at any rate, I went and I put the date for 240 days after May 28th. I added 248 days. I came out with January of 2001, then October 2001, June of 2002, February 2003 was the 4th degree, okay? And I realized that that's not to the day, right? Because 247 days is not 247 degrees. But to the day, I can only be a day or two off either way. So anything within a day or two, all over the world in the astrological communities, you're considered an expert if you can make a prediction within a day. They got gurus and people that they call master who are 2 months and two weeks off with their predictions. So you don't have to worry about striving for to-the-day accuracy when you first start your measure. You just need to be able to conceptualize how it's done so you can look at your life or the life of the world or the life of a government or the life of a society to determine what challenges that will be met during that time. Huh? It's better to be prepared than to have to make up your mind the moment you need to cross that bridge, right? What you need to do. Be prepared. It's half the battle, right? So, at any rate, I noticed that in 2004, they talked about military prison abuse. You see, at Abu Ghraib prison, United States military personnel were photographed taking pictures of torture and using what they call enhanced interrogation technique. Torture, basically, right? So that concurs with the moon in Aries. And the picture that went viral concerning that report or that incident was a picture of a woman soldier who had the prisoner on a fucking leash and he was naked on the ground, right? That is purely and directly the moon in Aries. That says woman soldier. You see, this is how astrology speaks. There's no, I would love to see, someone succeed at convincing me that you could play semantics with this. It speaks in images and symbols, not English, not Chinese. It speaks in images that point to realities. So where in Chinese, I don't know the Chinese word for fire, all right? But I know what it is in Arabic, right? It's nar, N-A-R. And in English, it's fire. So you gonna tell me I'm wrong because I didn't say nar? Or I'm wrong because I didn't say fire? No. In either language, when I point to that reality with that word, you know what I'm talking about. That's what astrology does. So what went viral? What did the world see? A woman soldier. And she, the moon, was subjecting a man, all right? To move on, in 2012, you had the Boston bombing. Now, any modern astrologer, because ancient astrologers and traditional astrologers don't use the outer planets. They don't use Uranus. They don't use Pluto. They don't use Neptune. We do, okay? So if you look at 2012, that fell like almost directly on the 20th degree, right? And at the 20th degree of the Jupiter-Saturn chart, we have the sign of explosions and we have the planet of explosion. And the Boston bombing, it happened to a crowd, right? Wasn't it at a parade or something? So that fits perfectly with the Uranus thing. The Mars in Gemini at 17 degrees fell between 2010 and 2012, right? And you had MERS and SARS, both virals or agents, viruses or agents, because it could have been a chemical agent. We still don't know. I mean, how many of y'all really done looked at this shit under a microscope? How many of y'all really believe what you hear? You know, when they say it's this and we determine it comes from this and it comes from bats. Just like AIDS come from fucking green tree monkeys. No, it didn't come from the green tree monkey. They invented that shit. So, you know, it doesn't come out too many years later. But at any rate, the chart describes exactly what it does, right? So Mars and Stars is given indication by Mars and Gemini. Obama was elected in 2008. This Pluto in Sagittarius, it also points to the Virginia Tech shootings, right? There were killings. Pluto, a murderer with a gun, right? Killing a lot of people on a college campus in this margin of time around 2008, 2009. Let me see where it really happened. Virginia Tech happened, no, 2007. So it was the year before it hit this. And what they call that in astrology is orbs. In other words, it doesn't have to be exact. Very much like a flame doesn't have to be in contact with your skin for you to be burned by it. Just try to hold your hand 2 inches above a lighter to see that the influence of that flame is in effect before you actually come in physical contact with it. So if we use an orb of 1 degree here, which is very tight, anywhere, any astrological school in the West, right? And I don't mean West as in European influence. I mean anything west of India, okay? Arabian astrology, Turkish, Chaldean, all of those are forms of Western astrology, okay? So in the Western tradition, 1 degree orb is like minimal. You got to lose some kind of orb, they say, right? Well, if that's the case and we apply 1 degree orb to this station right here, then we got a prediction. We already know within 1 year we can look and see that there was going to be killings at a college, that there was going to be widespread murder of foreigners. And you know, they say Obama dropped more than 2,000 bombs a day while he was in office. That is mass killing here of foreigners. You see? And he was elected in that year. See, in the chart is not going to look at it and say, you know, a mulatto president or a president who is racially mixed and all that. But the sign of races and different ethnicities and diversity of culture or ethnicity is Sagittarius. Anatomically, it rules the skin. Now, how do you determine on sight that a person is not of your culture or not of your race, right? The skin color. Then you know. If you're in a land where everybody's dark and here comes some pale motherfucker, he ain't from there. Or vice versa. You're in Europe during the 12, no, because we were there then too, right? Let's say. But we're there now, right? And all these Europeans, fair-skinned people, and then you see coming straight out the port or walking down the street, a few dark-skinned people from any culture, right? You know that they're not from this culture. That is what Sagittarius gives indication to. You see? Sagittarius also deals with the spread of viruses, okay? General Motors declared bankruptcy in 2009. So when we look at 2009, which falls in here, you got Chiron, which points to wounds and the need to recover. Now, some people might argue, and they will do so in vain, right? But because it points to every kind of wound, whether it is psychological, economic, physical, social, whatever, wherever you can apply the concept of a wound to, that's what Chiron means. Well, bankruptcy is a wound. You need to recover from that. Economically, that's a wound, right? It's a surgical methodology or a severe injury when you look at it in those terms, of which Chiron describes all the way, okay? Right now, we are where there are no planets in terms of this particular measure. And therefore, I must extend the understanding that there are always more than one measure to use, all right? Because the biggest thing that this chart pointed to over the last 20 years were banks and corporations flipping out and going bankrupt and not coming back, like Enron and things of this nature. But that was the overall theme of the chart. By virtue of the fact that Jupiter and Saturn was conjunct in Taurus, we would need to exercise other methods of measure to find all the other details. Like I said, this is just a simplified version that pertains to the planetary stations in the chart as they fall in the number line. We didn't get into any harmonics. We didn't use progressions, because we will come up with an entirely different scheme of indications if we use a tertiary measure on this chart as a birth chart. We come up with even more valid information. So in other words, this one measure doesn't give us every single detail for an entire 20-year span, but it points to some very key factors that altered the shape of our world. All right? I'm open for questions now. Right? If I can get some help from my technician. Hey, Mrs. Aku. I can't read that. All right. I need to get myself some water. I got dry mouth. You know what's so good about being able to do lectures from home? I can go right to my refrigerator and grab me something. They can hear me, right? All right, now do I need to look on the other computer at the screen for the questions? Because this little square just shows that there's red and white writing right there. It doesn't give me any indication whatsoever. I can't see the letters at all. It wouldn't matter because these are too small even for a person with glasses. And they're pixelated, you know. Do I have to look here? Or right there? All right. This is where the questions are going to appear in this box. Okay, well, I got to go back to the beginning of this chat. I haven't been paying attention to it the entire time. A broken clock is right twice a day. Wow. Really? No, it ain't. It still ain't right. The 5G is given indication by the Uranus in Aquarius. You can believe all this 3G, 4G stuff. That's high radiation. I would look to the next Jupiter Saturn cycle to analyze the effects on society of 5G due to the fact that it is not wholly implemented now and causing its effect. And by the time it is, and by the time those effects reach the mainstream, we'll be in the next cycle. So I would use the next cycle to make that measure. All right? I hope that answers his question. I don't see Facebook here. You know, I'm on YouTube. So if you see the questions from Facebook, you can do what you just did. You can scream them to me. How do you get 20 years synodic cycle? That was a measure from the ephemeris, measuring the square between Jupiter and Saturn or something else. Okay, cryptonomics. I got that because what I did was I measured the time. That's a solar figure, all right? It's the solar years. 20.5629166666666 solar years. And I used the concept that 360 degrees of solar transit equals a year. And I determined how many solar degrees it took from one Jupiter-Saturn conjunction to the next. That's how I arrived to the figure of 20 years. And that's exactly how long it takes from May the 28th, 2000 to December the 21st, 2020. How do you determine when Jupiter is in Saturn? Okay, Alex Snow. First, I just want to correct your terminology so you can get a more accurate conveyance when you're asking questions or when you're doing this science. That's a good question, though, so don't get it twisted. Jupiter will never be in Saturn, okay? Because they're two points. They're two planets that move through the zodiac. They're both in Taurus. But we know when they come together because we use the ephemeris or an astrology program or software to find and locate the position of these planets and to measure their motion through the zodiac. And this is how we determine where they are. Like right now, if somebody was to say to me, where is Saturn right now? Tropically, I would look at my astrology program or my ephemeris and I would use that. Back in the day, before computers were invented, we relied heavily on astrological ephemerises. Now we use software for the most part. Those people who have easy access to computers, right? Before then, you had to have a accurate working knowledge of astronomy, and you had to know. You had to know where the planets were, and you get taught these things when you go to school. When you're in science class in the 5th grade, they describe the whole solar system to you. But like a lot of things that we get as children in school, we forget that. I mean, 85% of the people who sign up for my class have forgotten how to do long division, which to me is absolutely ridiculous because I never forgot, right? But then I left school and went straight into a field of income that required that I know how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So I never got opportunity to get away from the need to remember. But most people have. Most people don't know how to do long division. Really, most of our people, anyway. You can take that how you want. I know there's going to be somebody out there saying, you talking bad about our people. That's not the case, man. People, for the most part, no matter what color they are, no matter what race or nationality or, whatever label you want to put on them, are dumbed down by this society. And what requires an individual to know right offhand how to convert geometric measure of space into calendar time. Only astrologers are concerned with that in the first fucking place. And astronomers. So if you're not working with the motions of the celestial sphere, that is going to be entirely foreign to you, or you forgot. But it's not something you can't go back and get. Like, if you forgot how to do geometry, they got all kinds of geometry videos right here on YouTube. You forgot how to do long division, they got that all over the internet. So really, there's no excuse. Martin Lay, you retracted a message. I wonder what that was. How do you use your Jupiter cycle to predict the next economic cycle, period? Okay. What I would use to predict the next economic cycle was, when the next chart comes up, the ascendant is going to be in Taurus. Ain't that a bitch? That is the sign for economics. So I will use the chart ruler, the aspects from the transits to its station in the Jupiter-Saturn chart. I would also use other measures. We have harmonics. I use those. We have tertiary secondary progressions. I will use the birth chart in tandem with if somebody wants to make an investment, I will use this chart, the red one, their birth chart, and progressions on top of that to measure the times of financial stress and ease. Okay? Have you noticed a conjunction with Jupiter and Saturn prediction with any symmetry with people? Well, yeah, indeed. My cousin, the day I was doing this measure, he was coming to my house, and he lost quite a bit of money the day he came to see me, man. And I had told him a couple weeks before this conjunction that he needed to guard his money, but his sun sits at about 20 degrees. I think it's 19 degrees in some minutes. But this is close enough. That conjunction itself is close enough to his sun degree to show. Simply because it was in the sign of Taurus gave indication that in his immediate environment, economically, in his economic environment, that he would suffer severe losses. At the beginning of that cycle, he did. He lost quite a bit of money. His house burned down. Okay, and he rebuilt it. So, but at any rate, his house burnt down, right? So I would use the birth chart. I would use this chart like a transit, because that's what it is. It is a transit chart. And I would wrap that around their birth chart, and then use the distance between exact aspects that were made from this chart to the birth chart. If there's an exact square, then I can say at the outset of this conjunction they would be experiencing some financial issues. And because it's in the sign of Aquarius, if I'm reading an Aquarius rising, then it's going to have a direct impact and effect on their perception, their personality, their enthusiasm in the world. If I'm reading for a Scorpio rising, that conjunction occurs in a Scorpio's 4th place. And by degree, I would determine what place, what house it's in. And I use equal ascendant houses. So if a person's ascendant is at 15 degrees and they're a Scorpio rising, I would say that it was happening in the 3rd house, 4th sign, right? And that it would affect their siblings, their cousins, their neighbors, their day-to-day contact, which is 3rd house, that shit. And it would have an impact on their domestic situation, because Aquarius is the sign that presides or gives indication of their domestic conditions, right? Let me move on. And the word there is synastry, not symmetry. All right, does it matter the placement of Saturn and Pluto with the death theory? Meaning whether it's separating or aligning. Well, that depends, okay? Because the 8th and 2nd ruler, if you're using a tropical zodiac, the 8th ruler and the 2nd ruler are the primary indicators of death. So, and that goes for whether it's Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mercury, the Sun, the Moon, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. All right? So the ruler of the 8th and the ruler of the 2nd place determine one of the first factors I look at with regards to death, okay? A person born with Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in their birth chart, it definitely, both planets are indicators for the father. So the condition of its station, in other words, is it receiving a lot of squares? Will it receive a lot of squares in the immediate future? After any time within a month after, or 2 months, really 3 months after their birth, right? 90 months after their birth. Then it would be a cause of concern for me, because I use secondary progressions, which anything within 3 months after your day you were born, that's 90 days. That's 90 years. So 1 day equals 1 year. So if it happens within 90 days after your birth and your chart gives us some indication of longevity, in other words, you're going to live past the age of 80, past the age of 72, then I would become concerned if it happened like 2.5 months. But if it was happening within a month, within 2 months after your birth, yes, I would be concerned about seeing what kind of indications are given by its station to the birth chart and in the progressions. You can't say just because a person is born in a Jupiter-Saturn cycle, we're all born in a Jupiter-Saturn cycle. You know, the one occurred before your birth. There's an immediate one after your birth, within 20 years after your birth. Within 20 to 21 years after your birth. The last time they conjuncted before Taurus was in Libra, I believe. The end of Libra. So those people who were born while Jupiter and Saturn conjuncted in Libra, and then when they conjuncted again 21 years later, each cycle, this is Jupiter-Saturn conjunction approximately every 20 to 21 years. And then there's a super cycle for that conjunction that every 60 years it switches triplicity. Let me explain that. There's an ancient or a traditional astrologer named Mashallah. It was studying his astrological methodology and dissertation and elaboration that I discovered the usage or the practicality of using Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions, okay? And it's what you call a shift, right? Oh, my daughter's really going for it right now. Okay. Conjunctions occur like this between Jupiter and Saturn. It happens in Taurus, then it happens in Virgo, then it happens in Capricorn, then it happens in Gemini, then it happens in Libra, then it happens in Aquarius. You see, then it shifts again. And it shifts the elements every 60 years. So there's 3 conjunctions in a earth sign, in the earth signs. Then it switches, and there's 3 conjunctions in the air signs. Then it switches, there's 3 conjunctions, and it goes like that. All you have to do is look up the Jupiter-Saturn Synod all over the internet. There's so much information on the internet, it's disgusting. People who haven't even thought to use it either don't know about the internet, or they are absolutely not really serious about trying to learn anything, man. Anything you want to know about astrology is on the web, except for particular methodology developed by individual astrologers. You know, like you ain't gonna find a lot of the formulas that I've devised because I haven't publicized them on the internet. I haven't written a book about them yet. But every book that has been written on the topic in the modern age is findable online. It's easy to find online. So because you have the Jupiter-Saturn Synod, which is merely the simple conjunction of the 2 planets, and then you have another cycle, which is the shift, which manifests every 60 years. That chart is good too because it shows on a collective basis how man goes through the evolution, right now we are dealing with earth signs and air signs with the shift from earth, from air to earth, right? And it's gonna go in the water. I devised all of this. I devised a Synod chart for Jupiter, Saturn, and the shift chart about 8 years ago. The notebook for it is in a crate in my closet. So through the course of the next few months, when I address this again, I'll pull that out then, all right, and show it to everybody. I didn't intend on using it. I didn't factor it into the speech. So pardon me that I don't have it available for me. But you can actually get an ephemeris and see it for yourself. And that's what I really suggest that everyone do, regardless of what you hear me say here. Don't trust me, right? Treat me like a deceiver. Take everything I say and go research that shit. Go see if I'm telling the truth. See if I remember correctly. Because I'm 54 years old now. My eyesight's getting bad. And I done forgot a lot of shit. So I might be dead ass wrong. Go double check my conveyance. Right? So you're going to see something that I failed to even mention. Even if you discover that, oh shit, he was right. Or he was wrong, right? You're going to discover even more. Because I'm coming off the top here. I'm not reading, I'm not quoting. What does Neptune mean in the moon and the moon, right? And a lot of Chiron in your birth chart. See, I'm not answering questions about birth charts today. We're talking about Jupiter, Saturn, Synod, and how to make that measure. Pardon. There's a very good site, couple of them, Astrodites and what's the name of that? Astrofix, right? No, it's not Astrofix. Is it Astrofix? Yeah, Astrofix. These sites are excellent for delineation, man. I mean, they use a lot of the exact same delineations that I use. I often wonder who the fucking author of the delineations are there, because we think a lot alike. So you can get that stuff online, all right? Let's talk about Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions and how to measure them. Right? And what about this measure did you miss? How about that? Right? Yeah, Federal TV. That Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra has these Western powers now when they destroy a country. They don't just, say you open your doors for us to rebuild your country and it's good for business and relations between us. We got a treaty. Let's do it. They force their form of government now, Libra, on a people. Do the amount of surrounding moons affect the energy levels of the planets in conjunction? I don't know. I am pretty sure. This is my belief, though, okay? Because I have not meticulously researched every single extra little thing I found astronomically. But I am of the mind that astrology is based on the science of correspondences. In other words, the planets don't cause anything. They don't make anything happen. They just happen to concur with the cycle of energy that allow or that makes things happen. So in other words, let's say that every 18 months, we find an occurrence in nature. It happens every 18 to 23 months. Let's say it fluctuates like that it's not perfectly even. Well, there is a motion above us of all the zillions of motions out in space. There's one that we can find that has a common denominator with the numbers 18 to 23 in terms of time. And if anybody here knows about the revolution of Mars, Mars moves around the zodiac anywhere from 18 to 23 months. That's how long its cycle is. So anything in life that concurs with that timing, we can use the planet Mars to gauge the nature of the development of the thing that moves at the same rate of speed of Mars. If something moves at 18 years to 23 years, let's say, that I don't know of one, but let's just say hypothetically, that there was a comet, like Halley's Comet, that came every 18 months to 23 months. Then we could use that comet to measure the progress of this third thing. So the fact that Jupiter has 51 moons, I mean Saturn has, that we know of, 21 moons that we know of, right? I'm pretty sure there's more than that. At any rate, the fact that it has so many moons may have some astrological bearing. However, I don't know of any methodology that would require us to use the moons. I see Sirius being in Aquarius being an indication here. I don't know the first thing about the asteroids other than the fact that there are more than 100,000 of them in every single degree of the zodiac. See, I use the planets. I just told you, unless there's a delay, CB, I don't know to concur or to dissent because I don't use Sirius. I use the planets, the only, and the lights, right? The sun and the moon. And the only other body other than the planets that I use is Chiron, all right? After that, it is calculated points, the ascendant, the midheaven, the IC, the descendant, and the nodes. And I try not to, get too complex. What I did one day was investigate how many asteroids they use in astrology and how many planets, and I put all of it into the birth chart. And it got a little bit too tedious for me, man. I want to make predictions that have to do with life-moving circumstances. I have yet to see event-worthy occurrence in life concur with the motion of an asteroid or a planetoid. I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen. I'm saying I've yet to see it. And until I see it, I don't see any significance. You know, I understand that you have some astrologers that swear by Ceres and Juno and what are the rest of them? You know, more of them. I just like to use wow, really? I gotta sign in the chat. Hey, will you put astro.com and astro.fix in there? I mean, astrofix address in there for this guy? Do you know how to use Google? Alexis? See, I really ain't here to service nobody, man. I hate typing. I don't even want to do that. You know? That's why I'm talking. I don't want to type. I don't even answer my texts on my phone for that reason. No, I'm not having a Mars day. But that's 24/7. You know, I don't check my texts because my old ass can't see it. I got to squint at this scene to read it. Yeah, it's passion. And I don't even deal with that. Certain things y'all can do yourself. You ain't got no business asking me to do. You don't know how to spell astro.com? The Google, use Google browser. It'll correct it for you. You know, certain things y'all need to do yourselves for real. You know? Astro.com is ASTRO.com. Astrofix is ASTROFIX. All right. Do the amount. Okay, somebody asked that question. I see Sarah's. Okay, so we addressed that. Can you spell it? Oh, I did spell. That's what he did ask me to do. My fault. All right. Are there any more questions dealing with the subject matter? If not, you know, I got a page on Instagram. I'm going to be doing a live on Instagram once a week. The reason why I came to do this live on YouTube is because Instagram isn't that friendly. You know, I don't get to save them. People don't see it after I do it. So I decided to use YouTube. But I'm still gonna use IG for little brief things. If y'all catch me there, and I'm gonna make announcements before I get on there. So if you follow me, put your notifications in, then you can catch me with those questions. All right? As it stands, I don't see any more questions pertaining to this subject specifically. Oh, did I just see a question I didn't answer? Estevan Rodriguez, you said in conjunction or compounding or distorting the transmission. You mean the transmission of electromagnetic waves and things of this nature? There's a guy who worked for RCA Records back in the 40s or the 50s. All you gotta do is Google it. Google RCA, not records, broadcast, right? RCA broadcast. This guy, John somebody. It's been years since I read this, but he claimed that certain sidereal, not sidereal, he was using solar-centric measure, astrological measure. Certain solar-centric aspects between the planets interfere with radio transmission. Just recently, during the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, people said that there was a graph too, so I don't know how authentic it is, but somebody released a photograph of an electromagnetic wave measuring the Earth's electromagnetosphere. And on the day of the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which was just last week, they said there was a spike in the Earth's electromagnetosphere. This is supported by his last name is Cotterell, Cotterell. He wrote a book called The Tutankhamun Prophecies. Well, he's a mathematician and an magnetist, whatever that is. And he claims to have measured the solar ionization and its bombardment of the Earth's electromagnetosphere throughout a year, and claims to have actual proof that the zodiac signs are a physical reality because of the spikes in the electromagnetosphere. You might want to check him out. Yeah, Carl Dance, the part of fortune. I don't use Arabic lots either. I'm very simple. You know, the planets and the signs. That's it. It doesn't take much more than that for me to achieve my end. If I needed more than that, I would reach out for those other things. Okay? What made me focus on the Saturn-Jupiter synod? Why not the Pluto-Jupiter synod? Cryptonomics, what made me focus on the Jupiter-Saturn was that the ancients used it. You know, if something has been working for centuries and centuries, why not use it? I mean, so I investigated it really to see if it was correct, to see if it was practical. When I found practical use for it, I embraced it. And I did so because I had been studying the work of Mashallah, Ibn Mashallah, Mashallah. You know, he's a Persian astrologer from back in the day. He was an astrologer for a Sasanian emperor, right? So reading his biography, I discovered that somebody had wrote a book on his methodology, and being is that I was looking for method, because most of these astrology books written today, you know, they tell you about the science and the aspects. They don't give you any methodology. They tell you a day for year, and then they don't even tell you that a year is 360 degrees, not 365 days. you know. They don't tell you that there are more than 360 degrees in one day, tropically or in reality, in 24 hours. Let's put it that way. So whether you're using tropical or sidereal, you're going to get more than 360 degrees of earthly rotation in exactly 24 hours. So they don't tell you that it's approximately 361 degrees, give or take a fraction of a degree per day. So these things are important when it comes to prediction. Because over a period of 10 days, now you're 10 degrees out. Over a period of 90 days, you're like 88 degrees out. So, I looked in different books. Man, the best astrology books in the world are found in college university reference sections. I was in Buffalo, and at Buffalo University, and they have an astrological book section. It's like one shelf wide and 5 or 6 shelves tall. But they have books in there on how to detect earthquakes astrologically. I've never seen in a bookstore a day in my life. So you got to go on a search, on a quest. It isn't enough to ask me, what books do you recommend? All of them. Because I don't even remember half the books I read back in the 70s and in the 80s. I don't remember the titles of those books. There's one book I wish I could remember the author. It was a woman, I know that. It wasn't Isabel Hickey either. But her father was an astrologer. I think it was a book by Evangeline Adams. I'm not even sure if it was her, see? But at any rate, that was a very enlightening book. It propelled me to predictive astrology with the transits. Because what she explained about the transits that I used, I remember. But there was a lot more in that book that I remember. And there's a lot of books I don't know the names of. So a lot of people say, well, what book did you get that from? I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't even care. Because if I cared, I would have remembered the name of the book. You see? So you have to go on your own personal quest. You will find books that nobody could recommend. Some of them books in them libraries are in the basements of these universities and haven't even been opened in years, in decades. Because nobody is really thirsty enough to go looking for them. And you gotta be. And don't rely on what the next man tells you about anything. Even what you read in the book is the next person telling you something. You gotta really take that information. If somebody says 1 day equals 1 year, then examine the properties of a day and examine the properties of a year and apply that method to see if 1 year equals 1 day in this consideration or in this methodology. Don't just say, oh, Raku said 1 day equals 1 year, so 1 day equals 1 year, because that is utterly ridiculous, man. That is parroting. That is not practice. K. Brooks, chat. I don't want to do any birth chart analysis here, because if you read one person, you got to read everybody else that has a question regarding their birth chart. And seeing as how 99% of the planet Earth is self-concerned, I'd be here reading birth charts all day. But if there's a square involved, that describes your dad. Jupiter and Saturn both point to your father and your father figures. So if you know anything about squares to Neptune, you know what Neptune is, right? Look at your father's habits, and it points directly to that. That's my thoughts on that. King Peace came with all due. The date, 10/22, 5:56 a.m. I know daylight savings time was in effect that day, so it was really 4:56, right? So Virgo was rising, right? M13, What other significance is the number 23? I have no clue, God. You have to go find my man King Simon. He does numerology. I just picked that number out of random. And because 23 months is the longest Mars ambulation of the zodiac, approximately just a little more than 18 months is the shortest one. And it depends on the Earth's triangulation. in the solar system with Mars and the sun that determines how fast it goes around. Because, you know, Mars is outside the Earth's scope. So this time Mars makes this sweep around, the Earth may be here. The next time it makes that sweep, the Earth may be over here. So the revolution of Mars appears to be a little shorter. So it fluctuates between 18 and 23 months. That's right, CB, global events. All right.